This morning I've got a little project here in the shop that I don't think is going to take me all that long. Of course, like anything, it just is going to depend on how far I want to take it and how good of a job I want to do. I need to make a few modifications to this bucket so that it pins up to the 19-61 Dearborn loader frame that I have on my 8N. And I'm kind of thinking that while I've got all the tools, the welders, all of that stuff out and this thing in the shop, I may as well do a couple of upgrades to the bucket as well. Mostly what I'm thinking about here would be like D-rings or hooks so that I have some good attachment points for straps or chains if I want to use the bucket to lift things up and move them around. That's what's going on today on Farmertylerranch. This bucket is a little bit bigger than the one that I have already, and I know a lot of you are probably thinking that the 8N, it probably can't really handle a much bigger bucket than what I've already got. You're probably right, but the thing about a bigger bucket is you can still use it, you just don't get it as full, and then if you're ever moving lighter material, then it's great because you have more capacity. The size is really not why I want to set this up so that it works with that tractor. The main thing that I'm sort of after is that it's made out of thicker metal. It doesn't have holes in it. There's no cracks in it. It's just overall in a lot better shape. This bucket is from I think 60s or 70s era Ford loader. And I measured the lower attachment points and they're actually the same width as the bucket that I have now. But it's not going to be that hard. I'm just going to have to weld like one eye or one attachment point in the middle, and then it should just pin right up to that tractor. The first thing that I want to do is remove this bolt that somebody welded here on the top. I would rather have like a hook or a D-ring here instead of a bolt. I think probably why this is here is they were just using it to like hook a chain on or something to lift stuff up. So I'm going to clean that up a little bit. So we move down the bucket here, you can see that there is an attachment point here in the middle. It's probably pretty close to where I need an attachment point, but the way they have this plate on top, it's not going to work for my setup. So I need to cut this off entirely. Once we go over to the ranch, I'm going to have to take some measurements off of that loader frame to figure out where I want this mounting point to be, and then we can weld the new point on there. So let's run down to the ranch because we need to get some measurements off of that loader frame before we can really do anything with this. Let's do it. Since I'm pretty much going to be copying the top link setup like I have here on the bale spear, the first measurement that I need is pretty easy. It's just the width in between these two tabs so that I know I have enough room for this hydraulic ram to pin up in here. The second measurement is a little bit more complicated, and in fact, rather than try to show you here on the spear, let's come and look at the other bucket, my old bucket. What I need to determine is the height difference between the bottom pin mounting points and the top one. When that top ram on the loader is fully collapsed, you want that bucket to be tilted back a little bit. I'm a little bit leery about just copying this bucket. I'm not sure that everything is the same here. What I might end up doing is just bringing the tractor down here to verify some heights and everything. We'll go ahead and take this measurement now, and when we go back to the bucket in the shop, we can kind of see where that would put the mounting point on that bucket. I think a good goal for me for today would be to get all this old stuff that needs to be cut off of here, cut off and cleaned up so that when I do get the tractor up here, I'm just ready to weld things back together. Good place to start is this big bolt that's been welded to the center of the bucket. This is some thick, rusty metal. This looks like a perfect job for the acetylene torch. Question that I get from time to time is about my polka dot hat here, and people wanting to know why I'm wearing that. And what this is a welder's hat, and it's made out of flame retardant material so that if you get any big sparks on your head, they don't burn your scalp. And if you don't think that's a concern or something that would happen, then you just haven't been welding long enough, because it does, and it's not pleasant.
All right, we'll keep cutting.
That's starting to look pretty good now, and I only gouged the bucket just a little bit. That's not a big deal because my plan is to weld this piece of 1/4-inch plate onto the bucket where the hook is gonna go. Next, I need to remove the old attachment point on the back of the bucket. Now, oddly enough, this is actually probably really close to where I'm gonna weld the new one in, but I wanna cut this one off for a couple of reasons. First of all, I would need to modify it anyway because it has this plate on the top that would interfere with my ram, so I already know that it won't work exactly how it is. But for two, I want to reinforce this area in the bucket a little bit just because we are putting a lot of stress on this when that bucket is full. And I think the bucket is only made out of 3/16 plate, which is actually pretty substantial, but I'm gonna weld a little piece of 3/8 inch on top of it that's gonna make it even stronger. After staring at this thing for a while, I have decided, this might come as a shock, to make this a lot more complicated than it probably needs to be. The reason that I'm doing that is because it's going to end up looking better and it's going to end up being a lot stronger. So let me show you what I'm thinking. So as you can see, we are left with this old plate here. I'm using my knife as a pointer because this is still really hot. What my plan is to take my cutoff wheel and cut one line straight across the plate here, and then we'll cut another one somewhere around here. I've got weld here and a little bit of weld here. So my plan there is to take my cutoff wheel on an angle and just kind of cut in this seam here, try to cut through that weld so that I can remove this piece of plate. So once that is removed, I'm gonna take this piece of 3/8 by, looks like 5-inch flat bar, and I'm gonna weld the top of it on this piece of angle, and then the bottom of it, it will fit in this little sort of wedge that we make when we cut this piece out. So basically it'll sit on here like that. Once that's in place, then the plan is to cut out some triangle pieces that will fit like right in here. So that's going to give us a solid mounting point to put a weldment to attach that ram to. The plan for that is these pieces, this would be setting flat obviously, and then we can figure out where these need to go to be in the right spot. Yeah, they'll just go somewhere like that. Well, that's when we'll have to bring the tractor over here to figure out exactly where these are going to go. This is going to be a lot more work, certainly. But when it's all done, it's going to be something that I can be proud of and something that I don't mind showing off. So that's what we're going to do. All right, let's get it. perfect right there. I'm gonna start by welding this with the MIG welder, and I'm just sort of doing that to fill that deep cradle where the bevel is. And once I do that all the way around, I'm gonna come back with the stick welder and burn this in with some 7018. I tried to keep these beads small so that I still have a little trough there to put my 7018 stick weld into, and I think that it looks pretty good. I think it's going to work. So while these welds are cooling off, I'm going to go ahead and cut out the triangle pieces that are going to fill in the sides of the plate. This is pretty close. What I'm thinking though, because this bucket obviously is on a contour, a radius. So I think if I angle this, you know, rather than butt it right up to the plate and then go around filling gaps, if I sort of angle it out a little bit like that, I think I can weld this bottom and then kind of up the side here and like bend it over to fill that gap and then match the radius. So that's kind of the idea I'm working with here now. Like maybe something like that, and then I could just pound it down in there. Let's try it. I've got two pretty burly tacks here now, but the main concern is that as I'm pounding on this piece trying to bend it, that the tacks just break. I could just fully weld this bottom seam because I know it's not going to move, but in case I've got that angle kind of cocked wrong, completely welding the bottom is probably not ideal. So I'm going to try to bend it like this. If it just keeps breaking the tacks, then I won't really have a choice, but I'm going to try it this way first. It's the next day now, and this is starting to look pretty good, but in my general theme of overbuilding everything, I'm going to go ahead and lay a few more passes of weld down on a couple of what I would consider to be critical strength points. And then the other thing that I noticed is that on this top piece of angle iron that was already welded to the bucket, it's actually not welded right here in the middle where we're kind of going to be applying a lot of force to it. So I need to clean that up, get all the old paint off of there, and weld that to the bucket itself. One way to know that you've got your welder settings dead on when you're welding 7018 is the slag does this. You don't barely need a chipping hammer. It just sort of separates itself and all stays in one piece. It's certainly been a lot of work to get to this point, but I think everything is looking pretty good. I've got a really nice, strong area now that I can weld this top attachment point to, and that was the whole goal of all of this. So now that I've spent over a day working on this part, I can actually go get the tractor and bring it up here to the shop so that I can get an accurate measurement on where this top mount needs to go. What I need to do with the top ram fully collapsed, I need to tilt that bucket back so I'll know how much like lift or back tilt that I have when the loader is all the way down. Got my mounting ears on a pin on the ram here, so I can just swing it up here, and that's where we want that to go. When you weld a joint, the heat shrinks the metal and pulls it towards that weld. So since I'm only welding these on one side, they're gonna kind of want, the heat's gonna want to kind of like pull them out like that. So what I'm gonna do now that I've got them tacked and everything looks good, this pipe can move in here freely, I'm gonna put a clamp on the top. I'm not gonna cinch it down because I don't want to bend those tacks to where the plates are like angled in, but I just want to hold them true so that when I do start putting my main beads on there and the metal wants to pull out, that clamp will kind of help hold it in place. I got my root pass done with the MIG welder. I'm gonna leave the tube in the holes there just so I can make sure that I'm maintaining alignment and everything. And you know, if something warps and it doesn't work quite right while the metal's hot, I can just beat it with the hammer and get it straightened out. It's probably the best time to do it. It's a couple days later and I'm jumping back on this project because I'm almost done with it. The last thing that I need to do is weld a little hook here in the middle of the bucket, but before I do that, I don't want to weld the hook directly to the bucket. I think it's going to be a lot stronger and last a lot longer if I go ahead and weld a piece of 1/4 inch plate on top here first and then weld the hook to that. After that's done, it's just a matter of getting this all painted up and bringing the tractor back over here so we can test fit this thing for the first time and see how it works. 3/16. Well, that's looking pretty good. I probably overdid it stacking welds on this hook, but a couple things. I wanted to fill in the hole that was there, and the other thing is that, you know, this hook kind of concentrates stress on one single point, which is that weld. So, I mean, there's no harm in really overbuilding it. I don't think the tractor is capable of making enough force or enough power to damage that, but you never know. This bucket can fit on other loaders and other tractors as well. So it's never a bad thing to have something overbuilt and overstrong. indication here is that everything is working good. We won't really know until we put a load in that bucket, but so far it's tilting and everything seems to be working fine. What I was able to notice is that when I pick the bucket up empty, I can tell that it's a lot heavier. As for what sort of effect this is going to have on me while I'm trying to use it, time will tell. I've got a little bit of dirt back at the ranch that needs to be moved, and that's going to be a perfect test for this tractor, but I can't go and do that right now because while I've got it here at the shop, I've got another upgrade that I need to do, but that's going to have to wait for another video. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys, and I hope I'll see you again on Farmer Tyler Ranch.